It's amazing to be a Seventh-day Adventist. You can go to any congregation and you feel right at home. It's pretty awesome. It's pretty awesome. So I am a teacher. Here, we're going to get my slides up. Oh. All right. I'm a teacher, so this is going to be a less traditional sermon and more of a dialogue because I do ask a lot of questions as we go along. So I would love for this to be a little less formal than you may be used to on Sabbath, but I want it to be practical. How about that? Does that make sense? So yes, as you heard, I do teach at Oregon Health and Science University. I'm from the East Coast. I was born and raised in the Washington, D.C. area and spent over a decade in Durham, North Carolina, where I trained in internal medicine and psychiatry at Duke University, where I'm still on faculty there. But you may see me more sometimes at camp meetings where I promote our nonprofit organization. It's called Dark to Light, and I've left this brochure in the back. If you know of any families, and sadly, sometimes divorce is a topic that's taboo in the church, but it's a reality that is affecting a lot of us. And so we have started a nonprofit called Dark to Light. Dark stands for Divorce Adjustment and Recovery for Kids, for the kids whose families may be going through struggles. We've supported now 35 kids or so, mainly in Oregon, but we have some in Washington as well. So if you know families who are struggling during that time, and we have pretty wonderful sponsors. The Portland Trailblazers have sponsored us with tickets to just kind of give kids an opportunity to be as normal during a transition period like that as possible. So we give people a care pack and things like that. So we want to just minister to the kids if their families are going through struggles. So if you know anyone like that, please look at our website or our brochure in the back that I've left here. And we hope that you'll support us in any way that you can. You may see me on TV a lot. This month is actually Mental Health Awareness Month, and I've been making the rounds. A lot of the networks have been calling me to appear on morning shows and talk shows and things to just talk about mental health awareness. But one of my hats that I wear is actually as a psychiatrist, and we treat serious depression using magnetic energy. So it's called transcranial magnetic stimulation that uses magnetic energy to treat people who have not responded to medications or talk therapy and things like that. So you may see our advertisements and things around because we are opening up an office in Vancouver. We have six offices that we treat people. Turning now to our matter at hand. What does it mean to be a Christian? What does it mean to be a Christian? Yeah, to believe? The original is we are followers of the way. I like that. We're followers of the way. That's what it really means to be a Christian. And they will know that we are Christians by our love, right? That love is key and core to everything that Jesus did on this earth, and it should probably be reflected in our behavior. But is the Christian experience, I use this slide of a jumping man. I noticed that on your website, you have a similar image on your website as I was looking. Is this the Christian experience? Is it always joyous? Is it always amazing? Or is it sometimes like this? Something out of a John Bunyan book, right? Where we're trials and tribulations and Pilgrim's Progress and all of that. I like to think it's probably both. And in college, I remember taking a film class, and I love this movie, Singing in the Rain. And I thought, how apropos is that description of what it's like to be a Christian? It rains on us, right? It rains on our parade, and we sometimes struggle, but it's probably best if we respond by finding the joys in life and dancing through that. Does that make sense? Is that what it means to be a Christian and have that Christian experience? But what about happiness? Is happiness core and central to what we do as Christians and how we behave? Is that what we're searching for? Is happiness? I'm seeing some yeses and nos. Yeah, it's a quandary, isn't it? Because I remember growing up and hearing that old heritage singer song, right? Happiness is to know the Savior, living a life within His, all right? Having a change in my behavior. Happiness is the Lord, right? So God wants us to have the happiness, but sometimes it means changing our behaviors. And that's what I'm going to really be talking about. I love this quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson. The purpose of life is actually not to be happy. It's to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. Does that resonate? I love it. One of the books that actually has changed my life is this book by John Piper. Are you familiar with this, Don't Waste Your Life? If you have not read this is a strong book recommendation that I would make for you. And one of the quotes in it is actually, this is a plaque that hangs in my kitchen. Only one life, 'twill soon be past. Only what's done for Christ will last. It makes us really take inventory of our lives moment to moment. Am I doing everything I need to be doing right now to further my journey with God? It breaks it down and just makes it simpler. Like, we have this one life, this one opportunity, and that's what we do for Christ, and His work and His mission is really the only thing that lasts. I am writing a book right now. It's called 40 Days of Healing, A Practical Guide to a Better Life. And I pulled from that book to come up with this sermon because I pulled 7 steps that I think that I want you to take home. 7 things that I want you to think about in your journey toward wellness. Because as a physician, that's what I care about. And I spend most of my time actually talking with my patients about behavior changes and things that we can do. Because if we look at the centers of disease control, how much of disease out there is related to our behaviors? Maybe not all, maybe be a little bit exaggerated, because we have genetic factors to weigh in, right? Genetic factors, financial factors, access to care. We all don't have the same pocketbooks to afford certain things, right? So those are determinants, social determinants of health, we call them. But behavior would be over 50% of disease can be attributed to behaviors. So we really need to focus on that behavioral aspect and what we can control. Our genes, we can't control. If you have a history of premature heart disease that runs in your family, you can do all the behaviors to prolong your life and live as healthy as possible, but you're still fighting with genetics when it comes to your cholesterol levels, your blood pressure levels, and certain things that you just can't control. Sometimes your body type, right? So it's a challenge, but we want to be able to control what we can control. Is that fair? Okay. So I showed you the 7 things we're going to look through today, but whispering a prayer, is prayer important in your life? I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that, because I feel I've learned a lot about prayer from our Muslim brothers and sisters. How often do they pray? How often do you pray? Think that's a rhetorical question. How often do you pray? How often do our Muslim brothers and sisters pray? 5 times a day. 5 times a day. Do you ritualistically stop and thank God? Their whole motto is, can someone who bathes 5 times a day get dirty? It's a good lesson for us as Adventists. Yeah. Or they can pray where they face Mecca. Right? So you don't have to go to a mosque. You can pray right here. If it's prayer time, you can pray facing Mecca. Right? So can we learn a lesson from that? Stopping, praying, taking inventory. Because are there medical outcomes as a result of prayer? Okay, all right, okay. Because I practice something we call evidence-based medicine, right? I don't use my best guesses when I give advice to my patients. I want to know what's been proven in the medical literature, right? If you came to me for my opinion, that wouldn't go very far. But I'm basing my decisions and my discussion with my patients on what has been proven. So has prayer been proven to work? One of my colleagues at Duke, his name is Mitch Krukoff, and Duke was a big home for research on spirituality and prayer in medical outcomes. And what they did was they looked at a research trial looking at something we called noetic interventions. So they broke it down. They looked at stress relaxation, imagery, which can be very helpful sometimes when you're stressed, to suddenly just close your eyes and imagine you're on a beach somewhere. Imagery can work very, very powerfully in the mind. Touch therapy and prayer. They looked at all of these for people with heart disease undergoing an intervention. Okay, so these are people who are about to have a medical procedure done on their heart. And do these kind of therapies work for medical outcomes? And what they found was there was a reduction by 25 to 30% in bad outcomes if you were using those interventions, the noetic therapies, but the best one that seemed to work was off-site prayer. So people, it's called intercessory prayer, people praying for you. Isn't that amazing? The best outcome was people praying for the individual. And did it matter what kind of prayer? This is a little bit too small for you to see, but I'll just review it quickly. There were people, there were people who from a Unity School of Christianity, Buddhists, Catholics, Jewish prayers where they would put the names of people going through heart procedures in the Wailing Wall in Jerusalem, fundamental Christians in North Carolina, Moravians, Baptists. It didn't matter who was praying for you. That's the God we serve. Does he hear all of our prayers, no matter what type of prayer it is? I believe so. I believe so. So it didn't matter who was praying for you. The fact that people were praying for you, you had a better heart outcome. Is that not powerful? So it gives new meaning to I'll be praying for you. So don't just give it lip service. Don't just say, oh yeah, we heard about your pulmonary problems. I'm going to pray for you. I'm not going to just say that. I'm actually going to go do it. Because going and doing it in my closed room, in my house, like Daniel did, we have magical outcomes that happen as a result of that. So church, let's pray for each other and be serious about it, because medical outcomes change as a result of it. And this is one of my mentors, Harold Koenig, who said probably saying a 30-second prayer at a key moment has done more good, he's a psychiatrist, more good than psychotherapy or drugs he's ever prescribed. And one of his actual studies was actually praying in a primary care office, and we saw better outcomes from prayer between a doctor and a patient. Now that's a sensitive subject, but yes, question. Yeah. Absolutely. A caution, though, when it comes to our prayer life, we don't want to be babbling, as Matthew talks about, these long-winded, diatribes that sometimes those flowery prayers. That's not what I don't believe that that's what God is asking us to do. He's asking for our earnest petitions. That's all. That's all. Earnest petition, not flowery vocabulary, not amazing rhetoric on that. So let's turn to our second principle, walking. I'm always reminded when I put this slide up of a story of a young man who asked his dad for a car. He said, "Dad, I'm 18. I need to get a car. Can you help me out with this?" And the young man had really long hair, and his dad said, "Okay, I'll make you a deal. I'll get you a car if you cut your hair." And the kid said, "Well, Dad, Jesus had long hair. Come on, can't I have long hair too?" And the dad said, well, Jesus walked everywhere he went, right? So till you cut your hair, we're going to walk like Jesus did everywhere, right? So, Mr. Man, but walking, is that good for us? I think it's the perfect exercise. And whenever we talk as doctors about physical activity, everybody jumps to this in their mind, like some expensive gym membership or some apparatus that you need to do this. No, it's absolutely not. I want you to think walking for 20 minutes. In fact, this afternoon, the National Alliance of Mentally Ill is doing a walk. And so get out there. It's a virtual walk this year because of COVID, but get out there and walk to support yourself, but support good causes. So I'm going to be out there walking to support NAMI and their efforts and post a little bit on that. But think about a 20-minute mile is what you want to cover. So it looks like this. If you walk at this pace for about 30 minutes, you will cover a mile and a half. And a mile and a half is the prescription that most governing bodies say is what you should do for good health. Is that too much to ask? A 30-minute stroll? I don't think so, and I think that's what God intended. He made it free and easy for us. So when my patients usually come in, they say things like this: hey doc, I can't fit that into my schedule. So what I tell them is, what fits your schedule better, exercising an hour a day or being dead 24 hours a day? Right? It boils down to that, right? What do you have time for? Right? I just don't have time for that. New data from The Lancet, a British publication, actually says if you do have a struggle making 30 minutes, and nobody should have a struggle making 30 minutes, but if you want to make excuses, then a 7-minute higher paced physical activity, and especially for some of the older folks in the audience, I want you to pay special attention because I'm going to show you a slide in just a minute that speed of walking may be very valuable. Okay, so a fast-paced 7-minute walk is as good as kind of a pace of this magnitude for an hour and a half. 30 minutes. 30 minutes. Okay? Because what about the mental health impact of this? So as a psychiatrist, does physical activity like walking impact your mental health? Absolutely. So one of my other colleagues at Duke, Jim Blumenthal, did the SMILE study. The SMILE study compared medications we use for treating depression. In this case, they used sertraline or Zoloft. Everybody familiar with Zoloft? Heard the name? One of the most prescribed antidepressants out there. Zoloft versus physical activity. 30 minutes of physical activity. And what they found was at 16 weeks, both groups were responding the same. So you can walk for 30 minutes a day or take a medicine, the outcome was the same. But most interesting was at 10 months, they studied them at 16 weeks, but 10 months later, they found that 30% in the medication group relapsed, but if you were walking, only 10% relapsed. So we call that durability of treatment. So the durability lasts if you were doing something behavioral like walking every day rather than just popping a pill. Is that interesting? So again, the consensus guidelines say 30 minutes of physical activity, it's about 1.5 miles at a pace of 3 to 4 miles an hour, like I just demonstrated for you. Perhaps a little more is better, but we don't know. I'm just giving you bare minimum of what we want to cover each day. Okay? Walking is a perfect exercise for all these reasons: builds stronger bones, reduces body fat, reduces heart disease, improves balance and coordination, etc., etc. I could go on and on. It's the perfect exercise, and God made it free. The interesting thing, another recent study said, if you walk, do it where there's a lot of fresh air. If you do it downtown locations, actually may not be as good for you as doing it in fresh air. Okay, so fine. This is a beautiful setting, by the way, your church. This is great for a walk. I mentioned the speed for you older folks in the audience. Anybody over 80 here? A couple of people over 80. Okay, wonderful. This is for you. This slide is for you because the Journal of the American Medical Association said, if you are over 85 actually in this group, and you can walk at that pace I just demonstrated for you, if you can walk this fast, you have a 91% chance of living for 10 years. You have a 91% chance of living till you're 95 if you can walk this fast. If you walk slightly less, it drops suddenly down to 62%. So if you can't keep up that 1.4 meters per second, so I just demonstrated it for you, if you can do that, you have a great chance, a 91% chance of living 10 more years. And the octogenarians who raised their hand, you guys look pretty good actually. So let's keep that up. Keep it up. And practice walking as quickly as possible. The big joke around the hospital at OHSU is, oh, are you rounding with Dr. Raj? He walks so fast. Because I do. I push myself to walk as fast as possible everywhere I go. I want to get a natural workout everywhere I go. Right? So it's a big campus, so I get a good workout. Exactly. So bottom line, walk faster, live longer. Simple. Walk faster, live longer. Very simple. Now, in terms of weight, because my research actually, has anybody heard of the medication called Contrave? Contrave for weight loss. Not many people have. I was one of the researchers on that drug trial. So weight and weight management is also very near and dear to my heart. Do we lose weight more by physical activity or what we put in our mouths? Any other out? Yeah, diet, absolutely. And the world is actually looking at us as Adventists for how we do this right. Did you realize that? Because we largely have plant-based diets. And the world is now finally catching up. You are all familiar with the blue zones. There are only 6, but I think 5 on this slide, 5 areas of the world where the longevity was seen out of proportion to the rest of the world. Okinawa, Japan, very fish-based diet. You've got Sardinia in Italy, lots of olive oil, right? You've got same thing in Greece, Mediterranean diet. That's been talked about a lot in the medical literature, the Mediterranean diet. But look at Loma Linda, California is on the map. Loma Linda, California is right up there with the others because of primarily a plant-based diet. They typically avoid, the blue zones typically avoid meat and dairy as well as sugary foods and beverages. So do we have a simple formula on healthy living there? I think so. More plants. Think more plants. A quick word on sodas, especially for the young ones, because I have a rule in my house with my kids. 1 soda a week. 1 soda a week. Because sodas, I think, have been a scourge on our populace. Would you give your kid 22 packets of sugar to eat? Then why are we giving them a can of soda? That's what's in a can of soda, 22 packets of sugar. And research that we've done at Duke showed that really, I never can understand these giant size sodas that like 7-Eleven and some of these places put out, because it's really the first couple of sips of a soda that the party goes off in your brain. And the rest of it becomes drudgery. I'm just finishing this because I have it. The satisfaction goes from fireworks to crash. And then you feel miserable, actually, as the more you consume. So think about that the next time you drink a sugary drink. It's the first 2 sips. Chips, a bag of chips, it's actually the first 2 chips that is where the fireworks go off. And after that, people are just stuffing their face for no benefit to the brain. And certainly not to the gut. What about, though, when it comes to wellness in eating, when it comes to fish? That's been a very controversial thing in the Adventist church, and I think I knocked everybody's socks off at camp meeting last year when I raised the subject and said, what did Jesus and his disciples eat? They were pescatarians. That's what I kind of am at this point in my life, is more of a pescatarian. And let's look at what Ellen White said. Did Ellen White consider fish meat? No, she did not. She did not. She actually ate fish herself. And her literature is actually, most Adventists say, what? Wow, I didn't know that. I thought it was all plant-based. No, actually, she considered a pescatarian diet very suitable. Very, very suitable. And this is from her Ellen White estate where she talked about, she did not feel that fish was meat in the same way. And that is actually what the research is showing. One of my favorite basketball players, I'm a Washington Wizards fan, Davis Bertans from Eastern Europe, he became pescatarian, and his shooting, he talks about in the Washington Post, his shooting became amazing. He's one of the best three-point shooters in the country after adopting his pescatarian diet. I want to look quickly at the obesity trends. This is 1985. And our country, back in 1985, when I was, in 8th and 9th grade, we were thin. We were thin as a society back then. Do you remember that? In the mid-'80s? And look at what's happened. All the red, as we get red and darker, we start to get our body mass index where 30% or more of the population is overweight in these states that are red. Over 30%. So we've shifted. In fact, I think it looks more like this. In 1990, our TVs were big and we were thin, but now after 2011, we became big and our TVs became thin. How did that work? How did that work? I have no idea. But I often get this question asked, well, this is just the way my shape is, and you're right. Some people, their genetics are a certain way. What's better to be, an apple-shaped person or a pear-shaped person? Apple, pear. We want to be not apples today, keep a doctor away. It's actually a pear in this case, right? The pear shape is actually, if you keep more of your weight in the hips, that's way better than keeping it in the middle, okay? For all health outcomes, all of the insulin sensitivity, if you have a big girth in your midsection, in your belly, that's where it gets to be much more problematic than if you keep it lower down in your hips. So pear shape is actually okay compared to apple shape. Okay? More and more of our science is less focused on body mass index nowadays compared to shape of the body. Is stress killing us? I wanted to quickly show you a patient example. This is normal stress. And when we are in high stress situations, do you know what all that yellow is? Fat. So our body puts out a lot of what we call cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. And that stress hormone actually packs on weight so that in case we're stressed in the future, imagine if you're in a starvation situation. That's a stressful situation. Your body's going to cling to as much fat as possible to burn up later. So stress, high stress, the grind, the daily grind of our world puts on weight in places that we don't want it. So our dietary approach, when I was back in school, was very complex. We had these food pyramids and whatnot that made it very difficult to really follow what a good diet should look like. So I want to simplify it for you. When you go to eat, when you have your lunch this afternoon, your Sabbath afternoon lunch, I want you to have a plate, a standard dinner plate, probably even a little less if you're having lunch. For dinner, let's use dinner, Sabbath dinner. Standard dinner plate, not 2 helpings, not 3, but 1 helping of a standard dinner plate size where half of your plate is fruits and veggies, a quarter of your plate is a starch, so rice, a piece of bread, a pasta, quarter of your plate, and another quarter of your plate is a protein. Beans, tofu, a piece of fish, whatever it is, a quarter of your plate. That simple formula is all you need. Simple formula. This is simple stuff. One standard dinner plate, half of your plate, fruits and veggies, quarter starch, quarter is a protein. As an Indian, I love rice. And so it was when I actually started practicing this. I had a few extra pounds when my plate, I love rice and curry. But when I shrunk my portion size for rice to a quarter instead of half of my plate, my weight bounced right to where I am right now. And it's just been stable since that time. So think about that. Pasta. We don't want a plate of spaghetti. We talked about spaghetti, right? Didn't we, Arya? We love spaghetti. Don't have a whole plate of spaghetti, a quarter of your plate, and then that salad fills up the half of the plate. Does that make sense? Simple, 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 simple. And vegetarianism, I know, how many of you are vegetarian? Okay, some hands, okay. Vegetarians live longer. Vegetarians live longer, which is why I became a pescatarian. Than when I go visit my mom and her chicken curry is still to die for. And so I do break that at times, but Pastor George Gaynor, my pastor, he does the same thing. When my mom comes over and makes chicken curry, he's eating it. But we can see that 12% improvement, we call it a hazard ratio. You have 12% less problems if you're a vegetarian. Even any version of it. Whether you're a pesco-vegetarian, I kept using the word pescatarian, so fish-eating vegetarians, even semi-vegetarians have an 8% improvement, which, if I'm honest with myself, that's probably what I am more of, is a semi-vegetarian. Mostly try to eat plants, but I do have a breakdown. And the Mediterranean lifestyle, be liberal in your cooking with olive oil and nuts. Olive oil and nuts, because they did this trial with mixed nuts and supplementing with as much olive oil as you want. That's all I cook in. Yep. Yeah, avocado oil. Avocados. It's all that better fat for you. So it's just not as good as olive. Yeah, and I'm not a gourmet chef, so I have heard that as well, that there are different cooking points for different things. I don't know enough about that. Yeah, but olive oil is what I cook with, mostly. All my Indian cooking is with olive oil. What about worrying less? I mentioned I'm a psychiatrist, and worry during the pandemic has gone sky high, right? In fact, how high do you think it's gone for depression and anxiety? 200%. Okay, yeah, let's do it in time. It's actually 5 times as close, 3 times. 3 times. So that would be close to, 3 times would be, close to a 200% increase. The rates were so up for depression, let's look at depression. About 7% of the population pre-pandemic was struggling with depression. And after, there was a study that came out in September, after it's about 3 times as much. So it's a problem, it's a problem. But worrying is not going to help necessarily, right? I just showed you the stress and what it does to our bodies when we pack on extra weight and things. Death anxiety, people are dying. My country of India, people are dying in droves, and the death fears are just mounting, and people are even wondering, finally, for a Hindu nation like India, our gods are idols. They're not listening to us. It's been powerful kind of on that aspect of it from a spiritual standpoint, where people who are used to praying to these gods are not finding the relief, and it's turning and opening eyes on the spiritual side of things. It's worrying less is easy. Hey, we should worry less. That's easily said, but how do we actually do it? I want to give you a simple trick, and what are these people doing? Breathing. Breathing, okay? I'm going to teach you a trick that we use with cancer patients. Because, any of you cancer survivors yeah, right on. Couple of people. Tough journey. Tough journey, it always is. And we want to give you tools that we can learn from that maybe you guys were taught on the oncology side of things, is breathing. So I'm going to teach you really quickly the 4-7-8 breathing technique, which I think is a good little trick to have. I use it sometimes because I field a lot of phone calls and things aren't going well with a patient or whatever. I need to stop and breathe, and you can do this quickly. So 4-7-8 simply means you're going to breathe in with your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 7. Out through the mouth for 8. And if you have pulmonary issues or anything that makes it hard, just shorten those intervals by half. Just make it, I think, 2, 3.5, and 4 if you have breathing issues. But 4-7-8, you just do that for a minute, you're going to be relaxed. Students, young people, when you're stressed and you're like, man, I'm studying and I can't figure this out, take a quick minute break and breathe. Stop and breathe. And oxygen is God's natural relaxant. That's what oxygen does. That's why when you're deprived of oxygen, if you're 88% on your pulse ox, you're depriving yourself. It feels like you're being choked. So that's what we want to breathe. Natural relaxation happens. Just do that 4 times. Feel brand new. Practice that today. Because is anxiety actually helpful? Absolutely it is. For the students, if you guys did not feel anxious, you wouldn't study for your tests and you'd fail. I went through that. I've taken a lot of big exams in my life, and if I didn't have test anxiety, I would fail them. But the right amount of stress is good for us. But when it gets too much, that's when our performance drops. I'm paralyzed by fear. That's when you can't function. And so we want to keep operating on this upper end of the curve of anxiety. A little bit of anxiety is a good thing. Too much anxiety is a bad thing. Does that make sense? Turning to sleep. Is it important for us to get a good night's rest? Yeah, I don't think anybody would argue with that. But how much sleep should we be getting? I want you to think about that for a minute. Okay? Because we have 2 different sides of the same coin. It's vain, so David, both in the Psalm said, it's vain that you rise up early and go late to rest, eating the bread of anxious toil, for he gives his beloved sleep. Love not sleep, lest you come to poverty. So we need to get a sweet spot with our sleep. Not sleep too little, not sleep too much, and a sweet spot. Now, I'll give you some best guesses on this in just a minute. But you've heard this old proverb, early to bed, early to rise, makes a man, what? Healthy, wealthy, and wise. We all seem to know that. It's a very old proverb from 1639, they think. And one of the healthiest people that I knew or knew of was Jean Calment in France. She lived to 122. So she became a case study for those of us in medicine of what is she doing right. Let me ask you this. Do you think she was a praying person? Yep. Do you think she woke up early in the morning? Yeah, she did. Did she walk quickly? Probably faster than anybody in her nursing facility. Did she smoke? Actually, she did. Trick question. I got you all. She smoked a little bit and drank a little bit of wine. So it's interesting. So she did smoke a little bit and drank a little wine, and she had a little bit of chocolate each day. So interesting. We can learn from this, but often her prayers, talking about her prayer life, she would often pray and ask God, why are you making me live so long? It's kind of interesting. Why am I living so long? But healthy, wealthy, one of the wealthiest men right now is Jeff Bezos, worth actually maybe pre-divorce numbers at this point. But his may have gone in half now. But he wakes up very early in the morning. He wakes up early because most experts say, and I've been doing this more. I used to be more of a night person, but now I'm definitely becoming more of an early bird. Our brains are sharpest for about an hour or two after we wake up. So that's when I try to make most of my decisions, kind of like Jeff Bezos. He makes his decisions for the day very early in the morning for that 1 to 2 hours when you wake up. That's when we are typically the sharpest. Does that make sense? Does that jibe with you? I found that I'm just sharpest in the morning, make those decisions, get my emails out, and then get on with my day. Wise, the wisest person we know of is Solomon. We don't know about his habits, right? The Bible didn't go too far into his habits, but he said, I will give you a wise and discerning heart so that there will never have been anyone like you, nor will there ever be. That's a pretty strong endorsement for his wisdom, would you say? But so how much sleep is ideal? Let me see guesses. How many of you would say 6 hours is adequate? Okay. 7? 8? Okay. 9? Okay. Any 10 takers? Nobody taking 10. Okay. All right. Oh, one hand in the back. I saw one. So this was one of the most interesting studies that I've read on sleep. They took the Stanford men's basketball team, and they made these young college athletes spend 10 hours in bed. 10 hours for athletes. It's hard for any college student, right? But 10 hours is quite a long time. They did that for 5 to 7 weeks. What do you think happened? What happened? They became lazy? That's interesting. Yeah. Actually, you know what? I'm going to surprise you. The opposite happened. They began to run faster. They began to throw free throw shots 9% better, and free throws and three-point goals were 9% better, which was the bottom line. They began to score 1 point per game more than they did before sleeping. And we know, for those of us who are sports fans, 1 point is often the difference between winning and losing. So 10 hours in bed, pretty powerful study, started to give us some support for more sleep may be better. So those of us, it's a tough thing because it's so individual. We don't even know why we really sleep. We have guesses. We have best guesses, but we don't fully know, other than it's kind of a wash and rinse cycle for our brain, right? That's a simple way of thinking. It's a wash and rinse for our brain. And the more time we spend washing and rinsing, probably better, but we don't fully know. So my advice to you is, when you wake up and you feel rested, like, wow, that was great, that's the amount of sleep you need. Okay, good.
Well, don't animals sleep when they're tired?
I don't know about animals.
Animals sleep 8 hours or 10 hours.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I am not a veterinarian, so I...
Because it's going to be interesting. When we go to heaven, there is no sun, there's no moon, so, will we sleep?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Rest.
I don't think we necessarily will need sleep in heaven, but I think we'll like to.
I think we'll nap.
If they're anything like me, yeah, Sabbath afternoon naps are like what I live for. Whoa, they're the best. But I want to tell you, right now, I didn't have a great night of sleep last night. So I'm probably not on my A game. I'm probably on my B+ game. This has been a really tough week. And it was very busy. And when we do, one night of sleep deprivation, though, is like being intoxicated, a blood alcohol level of 0.1, and 0.08 is what we determine for legal intoxication levels. So one night of sleep deprivation, I wasn't sleep deprived, but if we don't sleep very well, it's like we're showing up to work drunk. That's what it's like. So think about that when it comes to your sleep, and which is why with my kids too, I'm very, very serious about, hey, I need you to get certain amount of sleep, and lights are out at this certain time. That's why the military is so big on lights out, right? We want to get people sleep. Final words on wealth. Sleep of labor is sweet, whether they eat little or much, but as for rich, their abundance permits them no sleep. If you make too much money, your worry goes up, your dissatisfaction goes up. So money is not the solution a lot of times for happiness. People think it is, but you worry more. Suicide rates are higher. Right? You see this all the time with people. Tony Hsieh, I used to follow him. Anybody know who Tony Hsieh was? Tony Hsieh was the founder of Zappos, the online shoe company. His whole thing was happiness. He wanted to deliver happiness. He wrote a book called Delivering Happiness. Dead younger than me. He was 46 when he died. Drug involvement, but suicide ultimately. Very sad, very successful, billions of dollars. So what is the right amount of money we should make? A Princeton study in 2010 found that it's about $75,000 at that point in time. In today's money, it's about $86,000. This is for a single family or a single person family. Okay, so making $86,000 today. The way to calculate it for like a family of 4 is to take a square root of the number. So if you have a family of 4, square root would be 2, multiply 86 by 2. And that's kind of, the 170,000 or so. So Purdue then did another calculation of that. The well-being is if you make between $65,000 and $95,000 a year, that is the sweet spot. Too much, then you're worried more. Too low, you're also worried because you're not making bills. Does that make sense? So being in that sweet spot is where we want to get most of us in that range. Time is escaping me. A lot of my research actually has been done in burnout. Burnout is a big problem in the workplace, especially with doctors. I did a study at Adventist Health actually, and found that 55% of those primary care physicians at Adventist were burning out. 55. Does that matter to you? Absolutely, it should, because burnout rates in doctors correlates to your health suffering, which is why we're trying to work on this and making sure that doctors are not burning out with the mountains of paperwork and the numerous phone calls and things that go on, because if that starts to happen, your care suffers, and we don't want that to happen. So I always talk about this exercise, and I want you to do this. Me and my family did this for just 2 weeks. I want you to think about this exercise: is ending your day with 3 good things which you share amongst yourselves. So 3 good things. You end your day with 3 positive and good things that happened to you that day and the role you played in it. So it can't just be, oh, it was amazingly good weather today. That's a good thing, but I want it to be, it was great weather today, and we used that opportunity to take a family walk. That was a good thing today. So your role in it, and if you share that with your loved ones for just 2 weeks, it changes something in your brain where you go around looking throughout the day for all the positive things. It's amazing psychology. It's called positive psychology for a reason, where instead of looking for the bad things that happen to us each day, we start looking for the good things. And that's what happened to me. When we started this exercise, I started to think about 9, 10, and 11 things that I was going to share in our family worship that evening. And then I had to shrink it down to just 3 things, but you start to look for all the positives in the world around you. Does that make sense? That's a great way to combat burnout. And finally, willful decision-making. I like this book, The Paradox of Choice, because we always think the number of choices. I want a lot of choices. When I want to buy a car, I want a ton of choices. Does that actually make us more satisfied or happy? It doesn't. It's more stressful. Exactly right. So I personally think in terms of 3s. Something magical about that number. I don't know. I think God put that in our hearts with the Trinity. But I think in 3s. If you have more than 3 or maybe even 4 choices, your ability to make decisions drops. So when you're going to buy that new car or that next car, I probably advise you not to buy a new car, by the way. But when you're buying that next car, narrow your choices to 3. You'll be way more satisfied with the process. Because you want to be what we call a satisficer, learning to accept good enough rather than a maximizer. Now, are maximizers important in this world, those who seek the best? I think so. One of the most famous ones was actually Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill was very much a maximizer. He wanted the best always. That's a tough act. Probably didn't make him very happy. But for you and I think we should learn to accept good enough and being okay with that, which will then lend itself to happiness. Does that make sense? Yeah. You're happier with your outcome and your purchase, actually, when you do that. So in summary, let me just recap for you, since time has escaped us. Whispering a prayer. Start and end your day with it at minimum. But what do our Muslim brothers and sisters do? Walk quickly, a pace of a 20-minute mile, which again, looks like this. Not too fast, not too slow. Weight management, think plants, adding more plants to your diet. Worry less, I taught you how to breathe and relax for a minute using the 4-7-8 technique. We want to wake and sleep optimally, which is about 7 to 9 hours on average of sleep. Wealth and work management, work to live, not live to work. The borrower is slave to the lender is what Dave Ramsey always talks about, our Christian financial guru. And then willful decision-making, learn to be a satisficer. Be satisfied with your purchases, not ruminate. Yes?
Would you show us that 478 again?
Sure.
No, you want him to visit.
Oh, you want me to actually do it one more time? Okay, yeah, fair enough. So, I'm breathing in through the nose, out through the mouth. For 4, hold for 7. Got it? 4 in through the nose. Hold. Out. And, I did want to play this video if you could, if you're able to. Sorry, it's this one. If it does not play, there you go. Divorce is hard. It's one of the most difficult times in someone's life. Divorce, sadly, does not spare any ethnic group, any faith group. Divorce affects people of all walks of life. Divorce is ubiquitous in our society and is affecting everyone. What often gets lost is actually how kids feel, who sometimes don't know where their love and support is going to come from.
We as an organization want to make sure that all kids feel supported regardless of where they are in their journey. My name is Dr. Pritham Raj. I'm the president of Dark to Light. The mission of Dark to Light is to bring the healing and support that Jesus Christ himself would have shown to a child going through divorce. Going through the process myself, I could see more clearly the impact it had on my children and other kids who were going through divorce, and I knew that we had to do something about it. When we go through challenging times, we know that God is walking with us. We're not just in this alone. God uses us to help each other, and we want to be part of that mission of God to help other kids go through this process. Even with a token as simple as a stuffed animal, or a book to read with their family, or a dinner to enjoy with their folks. We want that time to be preserved and that time to connect. Everyone knows someone who has been affected by divorce, and we know that each situation is very unique and different. What we're hoping is for you to help us identify any child out there who would need our services and who would benefit from prayer and support during this dark time in their life. And we want to make sure that they know that they're going to get through it, that they're being thought of, you're being prayed for, you're being loved. And that's the message we want to send, pure and simple.
Shall we bow our heads? Heavenly Father, thank you, Lord, for being in our midst, for creating this glorious thing called the Sabbath, where we can commune with you, commune with each other, and work on our wellness, Lord. We are busy and we're running to and fro, and we can't wait to go home with you. And until that day, we ask that you bless us and protect us, especially in this pandemic. In your precious name we pray. Amen.